Teams of the past and the future have used gimmicks and more to try and will their team to victory, and none have worked better than the Rally Monkey. A random video shown on the scoreboard 2 years earlier led the Angels to a place they thought they'd never see. So let's look at how the Rally Monkey willed the Angels to a title.
Totally sports-esque. Major League.
The story of the 2002 Angels really begins 2 years earlier. On a random summer night against the San Francisco Giants, the Angels were trailing late in the game. Then, in a spur-of-the-moment decision, the video crew threw up a clip of a monkey jumping up and down from the movie Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, paired with the words, "Rally Monkey." At first it got some laughs and some confused looks, but then something happened. The Angels would rally with 2 runs in the 9th off Rob Nin to beat the Giants 6-5. Great foreshadowing, and suddenly, that silly monkey didn't seem so silly anymore. And for the team, that quickly became a tradition. The Rally Monkey joined the lore of Angels baseball. But unlike other traditions, some of which are sad, this one carried a spark of hope. For decades, the Angels had been defined by heartbreak, never winning a playoff series, playing second fiddle to the Dodgers, collapsing in the 1986 ALCS, and most painfully, blowing a 13-game division lead to Seattle in 1995. By the end of 2001, the curse looked stronger than ever. The Angels dropped 19 of their last 21 games, while stars like Tim Salmon and Darren Erstad underperformed, and ownership was in turmoil. Walt Disney, who had bought the team in 1996, had lost $100 million and was wanting out, and rumors even swirled that the Angels could be contracted out of existence. The Rally Monkey was fun, but it was going to take a lot more to save the team. Going into 2002, the Angels didn't look like a team ready to change their story. The real biggest upgrade seemed to be cosmetic, a brand new set of devilish red uniforms, and the season started just as badly as fans feared. At 6-14, it was their worst start in franchise history, but then something clicked. In May, they went 19-7, the best May in club history, and from there, they only got higher. By the summer, they were keeping pace with the powerhouse Oakland A's, aka the Moneyball A's. They did not catch the A's, but they continuously kept pressure on them, having a 16-1 September stretch. The Angels would finish 99-63, 4 games behind the A's, as they would secure the wild card. And a lot of credit went to third-year manager Mike Scioscia, always staying calm to the storms, like the rough April, or the injuries to players like Tim Salmon, Troy Percival, Aaron Selly, Benji Molina, and Darren Erstad, all of who missed chunks of the season. But the pitching staff was the real revelation. Jared Washburn broke out with an 18-6 record and a 3.15 ERA. Ramon Ortiz went 15-9, and rookie John Lackey, called up midseason, looked like he belonged from day one. In the bullpen, 2 journeymen in Brendan Donnelly and Ben Weber came out of nowhere to become middle relief locks. So going into the playoffs, the Angels were a dangerous team, but in their way was the New York Yankees, right back in the playoffs after losing the World Series. After losing to the Indians in the 97 ALDS, the Yankees had won 8 straight playoff series against AL teams and 10 of the last 11, and Game 1 made it seem the trend would keep going. Derek Jeter homered in the first, Jason Giambi added one of his own, and despite Troy Glaus hitting 2 home runs, the Yankees pulled away late on a Bernie Williams 3-run home run to win 8-5. But Game 2 was a different story, as the Angels' bats woke up, recording 17 hits in the game. Tim Salmon, Scott Spezio, Garrett Anderson, and Troy Glaus all went deep, while Francisco Rodriguez, the 20-year-old rookie who had made just 5 appearances, earned the win out of the bullpen as the Angels won 8-6, tying the series as they went back home. And when they came home, they showed they weren't happy just to be there. The Rally Monkey was still there, but Angels fans have found another weapon, that being the Thundersticks. These giant inflatable plastic bats, first popularized in Korea, made a high-pitched crack when banged together. And when 40,000 are doing it at the same time, it's pretty effective. However, Game 3 did not start out well, as the Yankees jumped out to a 6-1 lead. But the Angels tipped away and showed who they were. Adam Kennedy homered, Tim Salmon doubled in 2 runs, and the bullpen was locked down. By the 7th, they had tied the game, and then Tim Salmon crushed a home run in the 8th to give them a 9-6 win. And suddenly, the Angels had the Yankees on the ropes. In Game 4, the Yankees struck first again, but the 5th inning turned into a nightmare for David Wells. Sean Wooden tied the game with a homer. Then the Angels hit 5 straight singles to chase David Wells from the game. Benji Molina capped the inning with a 2-run double, and the Angels exploded for 8 runs to break the game wide open, as they would end up winning 9-5 to take the series 3-1. This being the Angels' first postseason series win in franchise history, as the Yankees' run of dominance over the American League was coming to an end, at least for 1 year. And truer than ever before, the Rally Monkey was real. The Angels rolled into the ALCS against the Twins, and right from the start, it looked like the Twins might be a team of destiny. They were the Cinderella story. Save from contraction just months earlier, they would defeat the A's in the ALDS to prevent Moneyball from having a Disney ending, and they would steal Game 1 behind Joe Mays. AJ Pierzynski hit a sac fly to give the Twins a lead, Mays went 8 strong innings before handing the ball to closer Eddie Guardado as the Twins won 2-1, and the Metrodome was more alive than ever. But just like after Game 1 of the ALDS, the Angels showed they were not done. In Game 2, the Angels brought their power. Darren Erceg launched a home run in the first off Rick Reed, and the Angels kept piling on with a strange play in the second. Scott Spezio broke for home on a double steal, got caught in a rundown, but somehow knocked the ball loose at the plate. No interference was called, and Spezio would score. David Eckstein fouled the base hit, making it 4-0, and Brad Fulmer's 2-run home run in the 6th, which stretched to 6. The Twins would claw back with 3 runs in the bottom half, but Troy Percival shut the door in the 9th. And just like that, the series was tied. In Game 3 was a pitcher's duel. Jared Washburn and Eric Milton went toe-to-toe, trading zeros for most of the night. Garrett Anderson broke through with a solo shot in the 2nd, and the Twins would tie in the 7th. But in the bottom of the 8th, Troy Glaus had the biggest swing of the night, hitting a solo home run to left to put the Angels back in front. Francisco Rodriguez picked up the win after Troy Percival slammed the door, and now the Angels had the momentum. In Game 4 was another pitcher's duel between John Lackey and Brad Lackey. For 6 innings, there were no runs, but in the 7th, the Angels would break through. Troy Glaus would single in a run, Scott Spezio would double in another, and the floodgates would open. By the time Benji Molina tripled in 2 more, the Angels had a 7-0 lead. The Twins scratched out a run in the 9th, but it was not enough, as the Angels were now up 3-1. The last time the Angels were in the ALCS was in 1986, and they were in this exact same situation. And that Game 5 saw Donnie Moore give up his famous home run to Dave Henderson, before the Angels would blow a 3-1 lead to the Red Sox. So obviously, they were hoping for a different result. And in this Game 5, it turned into the Adam Kennedy game. The Twins had a 5-3 lead in the 7th, but in the bottom half, Kennedy shocked everyone with his 3rd home run of the game. One of just 9 players hit 3 home runs in a postseason game. And that one was a 3-run blast to give the Angels the lead. The rally monkey was bouncing on the screen, the thunder sticks were loud, and from there the Angels poured it on. They sent 13 batters to the plate in the inning, scoring 10 runs to blow the Twins away. When Troy Percival recorded the final out, the Angels had a 13-5 win and their first ever American League pennant, taking down the Twins in 5 games. Having never won a postseason series before, they were suddenly 4 wins away from a World Series title. And they would be staying in the state of California as they were up against the NL wildcard in the San Francisco Giants, and one big challenge in Barry Bonds. Before 2002, Bonds had a reputation as a postseason dropper. Across 27 playoff games, he hit 196 with just 1 home run. But this October, he flipped the script, already hitting 4 home runs with an OPS of 1.286. So the Angels' strategy was just like everyone else. Keep runners off base from Bonds' hit and avoid giving him pitches to drive, which is easier said than done. The series opened in Anaheim, and the Angels drew first blood. Troy Glaus and Benji Molina each went deep to give the Angels early momentum, but the Giants had their own answer, that being Barry Bonds. In the 6th inning, facing Francisco Rodriguez, Bonds had a majestic home run to right field, only continuing to respond to his critics and his past playoff demons. And the Giants kept pouring it on as they would rack up 16 hits in the game. Benito Santiago and JT Snow each chipped in a few, and the Giants took Game 1 4-3. And now the Angels were in a familiar situation, as Game 2 was a wild and classic game. In a slugfest, the Angels jumped all over the Giants pitching, and the Giants jumped all over the Angels pitching. The teams combined for 21 runs in the back-and-forth game, with the defining moment coming in the bottom of the 8th, with the score tied 9-9. The longtime face of the franchise in Tim Salmon was stepped to the plate, and he would crush a go-ahead 2-run home run. However, the most memorable moment of the game came in the top of the 9th. With Barry Bonds facing Troy Percival, he would hit an absolute mammoth home run, some describing it as the furthest ball ever hit, but it was just a solo home run, as the Angels held on, and they won 11-10, evening the series as they were heading on the road. The World Series came to Pac Bell Park for the first time, and Livan Hernandez, someone with plenty postseason World Series experience, would falter here. The Angels seized control in the 3rd, with RBI singles by Troy Glaus and Garrett Anderson, plus a Scott Spezio triple, which fueled a 4-run frame. By the 4th, they led 8-1 and chased Hernandez from the game. The Giants briefly rallied with another home run from Bonds, who became the first since Hank Bauer in 1958 to homer in his first 3 World Series games. But the Angels kept pressing, and they would end up winning 10-4, claiming a 2-1 series lead, seemingly following the same pattern. Game 4 was defined by clutch hits and pitching. Rookie John Lackey kept the Giants quiet early, while Troy Glaus' home run gave the Angels a 3-0 lead. But the Giants struck back in the 5th. A single would spark a rally, and 4 more hits plus a walk tied the game at 3. The game was tied until the 8th, when JT Snow singled off Francisco Rodriguez, advanced on a pass ball, and would score on David Bell's base hit. Rob Nen closed the 9th for a second save, sealing their second 4-3 win to even the series at 2. and Game 5 was all about the Giants' offense. Jeff Kent homered twice, Bonds went deep again, and the Giants just overwhelmed the Angels with 16 runs, winning by 12, and now they were one win away from their first championship since they moved from New York, returning to Anaheim with all the momentum. But Game 6 is where it all came to fruition, and one of the greatest World Series games of all time. Through 7 innings, it looked like the Giants had things locked up. They had a 5-0 lead, behind home runs from Sean Dunston, and again, Barry Bonds. Dusty Baker even gave Russ Ortiz the game ball when he left them out in the 7th, a gesture meant to recognize the win. But that would be premature. The Angels season was hanging by a thread, as the World Series trophy was practically being polished for the Giants. But then came Scott Spezio. With 2 on and 2 out in the 7th, he worked a full count against Felix Rodriguez, and on the next pitch, he launched a drive into the right field seats, a 3-run home run, and suddenly it was 5-3. And the stadium was live for the first time. The rally monkey flashed on the video board, and the Angels had life. In the 8th, Darren Erceg led off with a solo home run to make it 5-4. Then with 2 on, and with the Giants closer Rob Nett in the game, Troy Glaus came up, and he delivered once again, hitting a double to drive in the tying and go-ahead runs, and just like that, the Angels had completed one of the greatest comebacks in World Series history, as they would win 6-5 to force a Game 7, proving once and for all, the rally monkey was not a gimmick. With it all on the line in Game 7, rookie John Lackey started for the Angels. The only reason he was starting was because Ramon Ortiz had a sore wrist, but he was ready for the occasion. He gave the Angels 5 solid innings, setting himself up to be the first rookie pitcher to win a World Series Game 7 since Babe Adams in 1909. And he had that chance because in the 3rd with the bases loaded, Garrett Anderson hit a bases-clearing double into the right center gap to break the game open, giving the Angels a 4-1 lead. And after Lackey, the bullpen took over. Brandon Donnelly, Francisco Rodriguez, Ben Weber, and finally Troy Percival would slam the door. When Kenny Lofton's fly ball landed in Darren Erceg's glove for the final out, Anaheim would erupt. As for the first time in franchise history, they were World Series champions. After all the previous heartbreaks, it was a jolt that came out of nowhere and saved the franchise as a whole. While they're a far cry from it now, the Angels were one of the best teams of the decade from then on. Though they didn't reach these heights again, they won 5 division titles after never winning a playoff series before. And it all really started with some f***ing monkey being shown on the scoreboard in 2000, and that team that came back against that night was the one they beat 2 years later in the same fashion to win their first and only title. Perhaps they need another gimmick now, better than giving a bunch of money to the wrong players in what has been a rough ride since and before the 2000s. And you can watch my video about the misfortune of the Angels below.